I'm John Mason Smith, and this is Coffee Chats with JMS. I'm the CEO and co-founder of two businesses in the payroll and PEO space, HireWith and Asure Acquisitions, and I've been in the payroll industry for over a decade, including starting, running, and selling a payroll firm. Welcome to Coffee with JMS. I'm John Mason Smith, here to talk about buying and selling payroll companies. How much is your payroll company actually worth? Let's break it down. So we have to talk about the big lie, which is that the big blue and big red will always have a 3x sitting there waiting for you the day you want to sell. And like everything, it's complicated, but this makes sense. It came out of a place where small business sales reps were going door to door trying to convince CPA firms just to have a conversation about selling. And, the ADP and Paychex overlords said, hey, tell them 3x. That's a reasonable number. And this was like 20 years ago. And then, those firms maybe said, well, we're not looking to sell right now, but we'll think about it. And that number just sits there as an anchor point. And then you get into the actual due diligence, and the M&A team comes out with a 2x or a 1.5x, and it's offensive. It's so far off from that magical 3x number. And we can talk about why, but like all things, it's just complicated. Let's talk about real numbers for just a minute. If you are below 3 million in top line revenue, you can reasonably expect for a standard acquisition to get anywhere from, depending on how small you are, from a 1x up to a 3x. It's true, even higher. If you're above 3 million, you're going to see 2.5 all the way up to like 3.75. If you're above 5 million, above 10 million, those numbers get crazier, right? There's a lot of factors at play, but there is no one set number because no one set payroll company has the same profile of clients. The other thing that I think a lot of people misunderstand is when you take a multiple that on its face is very high, like say a 4x, but you spread it out over multiple years, it's not really a 4x anymore. Because for the year that you're converting, you would have gotten those invoices anyway. And so we see a lot of asterisks on these top line numbers, and it's not about going with the buyer that's going to give you the most on the multiple. It's about who's going to give you the best value and help you achieve the goals you want to achieve during that conversion. Now, I want to clarify, we're talking specifically about asset-based transactions. And if you haven't heard that term before, there's a difference between what we call asset versus equity acquisitions. An equity acquisition is when the acquiring party is getting your desks, your chairs, your office space, your laptops. They own everything, and they're buying out, the things that it's in your QuickBooks, right? That tends to be what happens for these larger acquisitions. So you might have seen that Paychex is buying up Paycor. That's going to be an equity-based deal. More common in the sub $5 million revenue space are asset-based acquisitions where they're buying effectively the right to solicit your clients, the asset that is those contracts and those agreements with your customers. It's a much easier, smoother transaction. And that's what we mean when we talk about top line revenue and multiples. It's what times that top line invoice are they willing to pay you for that book. And the good news is what doesn't matter in that equation is how much your debt is, how much your costs are. If they have a better, more efficient machine, then they would pay more than you would be able to get for that book yourself. I think probably the most important factor for an asset-based transaction is how far off your pricing is from the buyer's pricing. So if you've been selling against, let's say ADP, for the last 10 years, and you've been winning business by underpricing them a little bit, well, ADP is not going to want to pay you top dollar for that book because they have to do price increases to get everything back to their standard model. That said, maybe you're a premium service and you've been charging a lot of money for high touch service and you're going to sell to that same buyer. Well, now they'd maybe be willing to pay even more of a multiple because the margin is higher and they're going to make their ROI quicker because their costs don't really substantially change. The other factor are add-on products. If you have been a payroll and time only firm and you sell to someone that really focuses a lot on selling insurance, maybe selling HR administrative services, selling add-on products like workers' compensation and onboarding and applicant tracking and performance reviews, they might look at your book as a very juicy, untapped supply of leads, and they're willing to overpay to get access to those leads. The most important thing to do to figure out what your multiple is to gather a list of all your clients and put that data into a spreadsheet where you can digest it down to its essence and say, okay, 50% of my clients look like this, 25% of my clients look like that, the average pricing looks like this. And you can hand that out to payroll bureaus that are on the acquisition side, and they'll happily do some math and say, okay, here's what I'm comfortable paying. And that exercise is something that I do all the time. Well, I've run out of coffee, so that's it for this video. Please like, subscribe, and let me know what you want me to cover in the next video. If you have any questions about buying or selling or hiring in the PEO or payroll industry, please get a hold of me. I'm easy to reach. Go to johnmasonsmith.com or find me on LinkedIn. Look forward to chatting more.